Welcome, everyone. Welcome to OMEP Seminar Series 2021 through 2022, ECCE in Debate. Hello, I am Soon Hwan Kim from President of OMEP Korea, and I will serve as a moderator of these seminars. Follow-up is a guideline for this participant. The translation channels in the word icon that appears in the bar below. Everyone can choose the language to listen, English, French, or the Spanish. The seminar will have the simultaneous translation channels in the three official languages of the OMEP. The chat will be used only to write a question for the specialist, and all the participants can write the question while the seminar is developing. The microphone will be muted during the sessions. The duration of the seminar will be 15 minutes through hours, 10 minutes presentation by the World President, and 20 minutes specialist expositions, and 5 minutes for the specialists to answer the question that arise. The seminar will include the keynote presentation by the two important UNESCO researchers who have the vast knowledge and the expertise about the ECCE, the Rolla and the Yoshie Kaga. They have developed two important studies that are going to be present in this event. First of all, we have Lola Moumné, hold a PhD in the international law from the University of Paris, Assas. As a program specialist, she is currently in charge of the program on right to education at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. She has been charged of the activity mainly related to the monitoring the implementations of the right to education at the international and the national levels, and the review and developing of the legal frameworks and the field of right to education through technical assistance, policy advice, and the guidance, and the policy research, capacity development, and advocacy in this area. And we also have Yoshie Kaga. She has a PhD in education from UCL, Institution of Education in London. She is an education program specialist at UNESCO. Since January 2020, she is responsible for the education for living together, education for ESD, education in emergency, and the ECCE at UNESCO Regional Bureau for West Africa in Senegal. She is currently overseeing projects such as those related to the preventions of the violence extremism through the educations, just the risk reduction educations, and the impact of COVID-19 on education system and ECCE personnel. Our publication include the Caring and Learning Together, integration of the ECCE within education 2010, and Investing Against the Evidence, the global state of ECCE in 2015. And her research interests include the relationship between ECCE and primary education and workforce development and the lifelong learning. And finally, we have Mercedes Mayol Lassalle. She's the World President of the OMEP. Since January 1st in 2020, National Normal teachers graduated in the education science at University of Buenos Aires. She's a professor in the master's degree in the early childhood education at the University of Buenos Aires, and she was elected a member of the CC NGO on Education 2030. Now, I am pleased to introduce to you the Mercedes, the World President of the OMEP.
Thank you, Soon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear friends. I would like to welcome the colleagues from all over the world who are actively participating in this seminar, and our representatives in Paris, in UNESCO Paris, that are present here. Thank you for coming in. I also want to thank Borgen Chacrun, Rokaya de Aguara, Rolla Moumné, Yoshie Kaga, Chris Bang, Wang Toluan, members of the education sector of UNESCO who have unconditionally supported OMEP in the realization of this webinar. Likewise, I want to highlight and thank the support of Delphine Dorsey and Rahakumari Mikalsamy, members of the Right to Education Initiative. I am convinced that solidarity and networking make us better people, better organization, and that the sum of our visions, experiences, and knowledge help us to find effective responses in order to build a safer and fairer world for young children. As you may know, OMEP was founded in 1948. The founders of this international non-governmental and non-profit organization were a group of humanists that met in the newly created UNESCO headquarters 75 years ago and agreed that it was necessary that early childhood should receive a special attention facing the consequences of World War II. Early childhood was recognized as a core stage of the development of every human being that requires protections and efforts in order to assure the survival and well-being. The struggle for human rights and the recognition of early childhood citizenship has a long story since the early 20th century. And it made possible several international declarations and treaties that enhanced the protection of children's dignity and development. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, whose 32nd anniversary was celebrated just 6 days ago, is the main international tool and clear guide for building public policies for the protection of children's rights and well-being. This legal framework was possible because of the action of multiple rights activists and NGOs that work together with the UN system and the governments, and OMEP actively participated in that struggle. OMEP, that is currently established in 68 countries, has been working connected with the UN nation systems, UN systems since its creation. We have been always endeavoring to bring early childhood to the global awareness and promoting the right to education and care. We believe that education is not only a right, but also a tool for the realization of other rights, and today is a catalysator of the Sustainable Development Goals. OMEP members are actively engaged in the realization of the Education 2030 agenda that rises in Target 4.2, where states committed themselves to ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood care and development services and preschool education. In Target 4.7, education is committed with the promotion of sustainable development, human rights, gender equality, cultures of peace, and global citizenship. Nowadays, our work focuses in the realization of this ambitious agenda, contributing, monitoring, and following the achievements of governments and on public policies and educational practices. But OMEP work cannot be done without sharing in-depth knowledge about the situation of early childhood education and care around the world. Advocacy work is intimately related to our ability to produce and share knowledge, to enable mutual learning and build awareness raising, to base our arguments on serious and reliable information. However, this is not an easy task. There is still insufficient information on the situation of young children around the world. Research and diagnosis are lacking. Countries report very little on the status of early childhood education and care. And this contributes to the invisibility of young children as right holders and as a concern of public policies. The Education 2030 agenda aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. But are the countries achieving this goal? What are the main obstacles? How is the pandemic affecting the responses to early childhood education and care? In most of the countries of the world, early childhood education and care policies are heterogeneous, fragmented, and unequal. Heterogeneous because they are made up of institutions and programs implemented in different historical moments of each society. There is a kaleidoscope of visions and perspective within experiences. There are formal, non-formal, school, out of school, state, private institutions and programs aimed at children from the richest families to the poorest. Some are traditional proposals, others are innovative, sustaining a dynamic pedagogical and political debate. Fragmented because throughout the world and in most of the countries, they are organized and managed by multiple institutions, units, overlaps and contradictory with diverse regulations and guiding criteria or with none. It also shows territorial fragmentation and breaks in their continuity when there are changes of policies and governments. Inequality is another characteristic of early childhood education and care policies, and is a multidimensional, complex, and a structural phenomenon in our societies that is also expressed in quality, availability, and access to institutions and programs. Another determining factor is the privatization of early childhood education and care offer. The lack of clear action in investment of states has determined the development of communitarian initiatives and the expansion of for-profit programs. This results in stratification and rising inequalities in access to quality education based on the economic conditions of each family. This shows that for many families and children, early childhood education and care remains in practice as a privilege rather than a human right. Quality of early childhood education varies according to different perspectives. Some institutions focus only on ensuring the most basic care and survival of children. Others focus on academic learning achievement and assessments, while there are others that luckily focus on a holistic and comprehensive approach by proposing play, creativity, cooperation, and promotion of self-confidence, autonomy, and participation of young children. In this scenario of fragmented and weak ECCE policies, the pandemic of COVID-19 highlighted the structural inequalities, injustices, lack of investment and states' involvement with young children. As I said before, to build relevant and timely public policies, we need to make visible the situation of children around the world. We need research to define plans and horizons. The UNESCO team has produced two remarkable and valuable documents that will be presented today. These documents must be known and shared. Both bring clarity on main problems of early childhood education. In addition to its undeniable seriousness, we must also highlight that the voice of UNESCO is recognized and valued by all the governments of the world. Let us enrich of this double advantage to improve, ground, and develop our advocacy work, enhancing diagnosis and recommendations for the construction of public policies that protect the well-being and holistic development of early childhood. This is also an invitation to think about what is not reported, about what we do not know about early childhood education and care, and about what we will have to continue examining and researching. These valuable studies offer us answers and also open up new questions and clues to continue building knowledge for early childhood action. To sum up, I want to remind the legacy of Paulo Freire. Dialogue is for Freire the only way to know, of knowing, the only way that education can become humanistic and humanizing, because dialogue is the way of being properly human. We dreamed this series of webinars as an opportunity to open a fruitful dialogue within the OMEP community, together with other actors and organizations committed with early childhood education and care. We hope that knowledge, reflection, and action will remain united and can be strengthened and can strengthen our political and pedagogical practice to create a fairer and more human world for all children from birth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercedes. Okay, next we have Rolla Moumné. She will speak about the right to pre-primary education and global study. Okay, Rolla.
Thank you very much. I am trying to share my screen. I hope you can see it.
Clearly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really very inspiring. Thank you. So for me, it's a real pleasure to be here really with you today to discuss this important subject that is gaining more and more importance. So really very grateful for that. I am going to present, as Mercedes mentioned, a study on the right to pre-primary education. It's a project that we conducted last year. And I'm going to present the context of this project, the objective, the main conclusions, some findings, and also the next steps. I would like just to start by saying that early childhood care and education is now being prioritized, and just to mention that a global partnership strategy in this field will be launched in a coming days to advance the agenda. And this strategy leads really to the importance to forge partnerships, further coordination and collaboration to implement an action plan with result-oriented strategies for policies and services in this area. We know that early learning is an important dimension of the right to education, as this initial stage of life sets the foundation of lifelong learning, and this was recalled and emphasized by Mercedes earlier. We know that the right to education begins at birth, and international human rights law recognizes specific rights in early age of life. However, early childhood care and education has not been fully recognized as a fundamental right under international human rights law in a way that would create binding obligations, I would say. So really the goal of this strategy is really to ensure that countries meet their development objectives through 5 different strategies. And one of the strategies is to strengthen policy governance and financing, which includes a normative dimension to better foster a human rights perspective. So I would just like to mention that we know that there is need to reinforce the normative framework in this area at 2 levels, actually, I would say. First of all, at international level, there is a need to develop an international framework to anchor the human rights dimension as central to ensuring universal access to quality and inclusive services, but also at national level by engaging countries in ensuring wider access to quality and inclusive ECCE by further developing their national legal and policy frameworks. And this is precisely in this context that we carried out this global study. This is a project I mentioned that was conducted last year and launched this year to reach a better understanding about the adoption of free and compulsory primary education around the world. We know that ECCE is an essential stage of human development. We know that the expansion of pre-primary education encourages children's participation in quality learning environment, and that inclusion also remains a central question for education policymakers, for stakeholders, and for parents. So we know the importance of ECCE and pre-primary education, especially for vulnerable groups. However, despite the importance and increased recognition, we know also that one out of 2 children does not receive pre-primary education. And we also know that during the pandemic, more than 155 million preschool age children were affected by school closures, and the education response didn't really prioritize ECCE. Therefore, we consider that the adoption of legal frameworks, both at international and national level, is the first step to ensure that early learning is guaranteed at all times and in all contexts. While we consider ECCE as an integral part of the right to education, the right to pre-primary education is not an explicit right under international law. We know that it is recognized and developed in Sustainable Development Goal, especially, of course, SDG target 4.2, but we also know that this does not hold legal obligations. Therefore, I'm going to present very, very quickly the rationale of the study that we conducted. Its aim, it aims is to better understand the global and regional trends in this area from a rights-based perspective. It provides a set of recommendations to ensure the inclusion of ECCE as a human right within long-term education and development objectives. It also offers a set of recommendations for policymakers to promote inclusion of early childhood and pre-primary education as a human right, as I mentioned. So I'm going to very briefly just mention that as part of the methodology, we conducted a literature review that focused on identifying national, regional, and global studies on the legal and policy context with regard to the right to free and compulsory pre-primary education. And we used some sources, among which data on free and compulsory education, I would say qualitative data that through a research that was conducted. We also complemented this with additional information on the nature and content that was obtained for 17 countries through the excellent partnership with a Right to Education initiative. And education input and outcome data were also collected from UNESCO Institute for Statistics. We know that the international community has formally recognized on several occasions the intrinsic, I would say the intrinsic benefits in providing all children, especially the most vulnerable and disadvantaged, with early learning opportunities that are of quality. Just to say that so it's important to give full effect to the Sustainable Development Goal 4.2. So just very quickly, I would like to share with you the key findings of the study. I would say that one of them is that the legal frameworks in most countries are not yet adequate enough to implement international rights and goals for pre-primary education. We have 63 countries who have adopted free pre-primary education. And we can see that more than half of the countries with available data in Latin America and the Caribbean, Europe and North America, and Eastern and Central Europe have adopted a legal framework which guarantee free primary education. So we can see really the difference. I would also like to mention that the majority of the countries with compulsory pre-primary education are also located in the same regions, and most are of upper, middle, and high income groups. I will try to go a bit quickly, sorry. 46 countries have adopted free and compulsory pre-primary education. And we can notice that in the 46 cases where this has been adopted, nearly all countries have introduced both rights in the same year. This slide shows the regional distribution of free and compulsory provision. And I would mention that specific legal provisions target vulnerable groups so that they can benefit from facilitated or priority access to pre-primary education. We can also see from the findings that despite the low take-up of legal frameworks, enrollment in primary education has been increasing since 1999 in all regions, which is very positive. We can also understand from the finding that generally the average rate of increase appears higher in those countries which adopted the legal provision. However, we have to mention that country case studies reveal that not all countries show a change in enrollment following the adoption date of the legal framework. Finally, I'd like to mention that countries with free and compulsory pre-primary education seem to have higher rates of early childhood well-being as measured by ECCE. Also, country case studies show that the adoption of free and compulsory education might be affected by negative aspects. I mean, it might have a negative effect in some countries, especially with regard to quality education. And we have some examples for that. And finally, countries with available evidence appeared to increase on government expenditure in pre-primary education as a percentage of GDP following the adoption of legal frameworks for free and compulsory. But this is relatively limited in terms of research and needs really more research to verify this aspect. So based on the analysis, the study suggests some recommendations in terms of governance and financing, in terms of legal clarity, in terms of societal expectations, and in terms of the importance of early childhood development, with also some recommendations on monitoring and evaluation. So very quickly, when it comes to governance and financing, we notice that stronger governance in ECCE requires incorporating an intersectoral perspective to planning and decision making, that is ensuring the involvement of relevant stakeholders. Legal clarity is important because policy statements and sometimes objectives are not always coherent within a country, and in some cases can even lead to confusion or could be contradictory, which may prevent for full enforcement, of course. So there is need for alignment at all levels. There is need to strengthen the perceived value of pre-primary education. That is an important point as well. Parents often believe that children should begin school when the government states it is free and compulsory. And there is also need to focus on child-centered pedagogies and develop technical expertise across relevant departments. PPE has also to be defined as a distinct period in children cognitive and social developments. Monitoring and evaluating progress across this four fields is necessary for better accountability, planning, and policy making within the education sector. So, based on that, what are the next steps? So the study only provides a first analysis of the national legal frameworks on PPE. However, it's a fundamental step, of course, as prioritizing the needs of young children and guaranteeing their right to free and compulsory pre-primary education in national frameworks is key in ensuring that all these rights are maintained in all circumstances, including in times of emergencies and crisis, and we have noticed that. So to strengthen national concrete implementation, in-depth country studies will be carried out to further research other related aspects, and this will contribute also to the implementation of the global partnership strategy that I mentioned earlier. So these areas really to deep dive the analysis and examine really examine further correlations. Let me just take this opportunity to two words about also as part of the next steps. I would like just to mention that UNESCO has launched a global conversation on the evolving dimensions of the right to education, and this was part of the campaign for the anniversary of the UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education, the 60th anniversary. So this global conversation currently has important contributions from educators, from education specialists, from NGOs, experts, etc., international organizations as well. And the findings, I mean, this contribution will inform a discussion, a conversation, or a reflection. Let's call it a reflection on how the right to education, as it's conceived today by the international legal framework, may evolve. What would be the new dimensions? What will be the emerging trends that will make that this rights will have to adapt to the new context, new reality, and ensure the evolving agenda in this aspect. So I would just mention that an international seminar will be organized in a few days on the 7th and 8th of December to launch the process in this area, to reflect on this new dimensions and this new and this evolving agenda, and foster the discussion on various thematic areas, including ECCE, which is, by the way, an important area that will be considered. So it is hoped that this process will lead to a global framework for the evolution of the right to education, highlighting really the importance of ECCE and pre-primary education from a human rights based approach. Let me just mention very quickly that as as kind of initial insights from this consultation that was conducted, and that will also inform the discussion. So what was highlighted is really the importance to strengthen protection in international legal framework, reflecting what already exists in soft law instruments with regard to early childhood care and education. The importance also to promote intersectoral approach to education, health, and care. The importance to consider rights of parents to state support. Further clear linkages with gender equality, and consider how ECCE provision can ensure inclusion of vulnerable groups from a lifelong learning perspective. So these ideas will be discussed during this seminar to build consensus on the priorities of ECCE and how the normative framework could or should be updated to reflect these priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rolla. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the last speaker, Yoshie Kaga. She will talk about the impact of the COVID-19 on early childhood education in Asia Pacific and Sub-Saharan Africa, in insight from the result of the regional personal survey. Okay, Yoshie.
Okay, thank you very much, Soon Hwan. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to present this study to you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Yoshie, and it's really a privilege for Rolla and myself to present in this OMEP webinar series, as we really admire the work of OMEP, and which is also a historical partner of UNESCO since long time. I actually wanted to present this study with my colleague, Christy Bang, who is based in UNESCO Bangkok, because she's the co-author of the report on the findings of the surveys. But since she was not able to attend because of prior commitment, I would be presenting the findings and recommendations. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to say a few words about why we decided to table of content. Anyways, you can, yes, thank you very much. So I'm going to say a few words about why we conducted this surveys, and then give you a little bit of information about the context of the regions which we targeted for the surveys. And then I'd like to give some overview of the surveys and 8 key findings and 3 key messages that came out of the surveys. Next, please. The idea of the surveys emerged as the world was hit by the COVID-19 in 2020. And so early childhood centers, schools, workplaces, they all got closed. Education and care that were habitually provided were not available anymore. We had to face unprecedented situations, and learn to adapt, and also find different ways to continue offering opportunities for learning and interactions with children, but in a climate of sort of anxiety and uncertainties. We were particularly interested in knowing what's happening to the early childhood personnel, as the international and local debates around the impact of COVID-19 education did not sufficiently address this foundational stage, as Rolla has said earlier. Colleagues from the UNESCO Bangkok and the UNESCO Dakar kind of put our heads together, and we decided to hear from the early childhood personnel, what their experiences are, what the challenges are, what the responses they are giving in this very difficult time. We wanted to also try to raise awareness about the effects of COVID in this early childhood field. and as well as contribute some insights on what kind of capacity building needs that the early childhood personnel might be having in terms of needs. Next slide, please. In terms of the regional context, as you probably know very well, the level of provision in early childhood education are different, quite different from Asia Pacific to Sub-Saharan Africa, which are the two regions that were targeted. So if you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, the enrollment rate as of today, or as of 2020, was about 28%, whereas in East Asia and Pacific, 84%. And then some other sub-regions in Asia were above 40%. So there is quite a bit of difference in terms of the level of provision. Next slide, please. But then there is some similarities across the regions, which is that the proportion of female teachers is quite prominent in the pre-primary sector compared to primary and secondary sectors. So as you can see in the bar chart with regard to Asian Pacific, the red part is the female proportion, and then the blue part is the male proportion. So it's very evident from this chart that there's much more female workers in pre-primary compared to other sectors. And this is the same actually for Sub-Saharan Africa. Next, please. In terms of connectivity, we do see also a difference between the two regions. So Asia Pacific, there are better indicators being shown in terms of individuals accessing the internet, 44.5% percentage of household with internet access, 43%, and then percentage of population with mobile internet connection, 60% in East Asia and the Pacific, and 33% in South Asia. So in contrast, you see that in Sub-Saharan Africa, the rates are a bit lower, quite a bit lower, but then it's in a full expansion, I should say, also in Africa. Next slide, please. So this survey, the surveys were conducted, as we said, in Asia Pacific and also in Sub-Saharan Africa. The Asian part was led by UNESCO Bangkok, and the data was collected between 20th of April and 22nd of May 2020. And for the Sub-Saharan survey, it was the UNESCO Dakar, where I belong to, which led the initiative, and data collected between 27th of May and the 3rd of July. Next, please. So in terms of the target populations, we had, broadly speaking, two different kinds. So one is heads or principals of centers and schools, and then the second category, teachers, educators, and teacher assistants. So as far as the partners in Asia are concerned, we had mainly UNICEF, the ARNIC, Early Childhood Workforce Initiatives, and International Step-by-Step Association. For the partners in Sub-Saharan Africa, we have quite a bit of range of partners. So Afghan ECT task team of Regional Coordination Group in West Africa, in Central Africa, ILO, ADEA for early childhood, and UNICEF, and of course there was OMEP, the regional representative, which was very active in contributing to the processes, and for which I really like to thank her. So this financial support was provided by BMZ, the GIZ, for the data analysis and report preparation. Next, please. Just a few words about what kind of survey themes we adopted. So I'd like to show you how we designed for the South Sub-Saharan Africa survey. So we had 3 different parts. Part A is for all respondents to respond. Part B is for the heads and principals. And then part C was for teachers and educators. For the part which was applying to everybody, we sought background information about the respondents and their work environment. And then for the part B and part C, we have common themes such as closures or reopening of centers, support received, education and communication practices during closure, strategies to prepare for reopening, desired training and support. But then we have some items that are different or domains that are different. So for the part C, for the teachers and educators, we did ask them what kind of change they experience in terms of work status or conditions. And also we asked them what are the challenges in providing education during closure. Next, please. So in terms of methodology, very quickly, so we developed the questionnaires, we drafted the questionnaires, we had the partners review the questionnaires, and then the dissemination was done online and through the partners and the networks that were existing. So the survey was administered online, and the Asia survey was administered in 9 languages, Sub-Saharan Africa in 3 languages, to reflect the diversity of main languages used. So the data analysis was conducted by ACR in Australia, and that led to frequency tables summarizing responses provided. So how we did actually, the Bangkok colleagues took the lead, and so the Sub-Saharan Africa survey was an adaptation of what the Asian Pacific colleagues had developed. Just to say that these are not the comparative surveys, and then and also the results are not representative. What we try to do was to do a very rapid assessment of what's going on and to give a snapshot of situation and practices. So in terms of responses, we got 2,040 responses from 34 countries in Asia and 1,480 responses from 31 countries from Sub-Saharan Africa. Next, please. You can skip this. Next, please. So the first key finding that I'd like to share with you is that few personnel had received training on crisis management and distance teaching and learning prior to the COVID-19 outbreak in both regions. So if you see the table, the percentage of people who were trained on distance teaching or disaster preparedness, crisis management were quite low. Lower in Sub-Saharan Africa, but then nevertheless for both regions. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. The second finding is that there was some level of discontinuation of personnel remuneration and changes to employment status that was reported. So as the COVID-19 broke out. So if you look at the Sub-Saharan Africa survey, the percentage of people who were partially remunerated was 23% after the outbreak of COVID, and then 33% experienced non-remuneration since the outbreak. For the Asia Pacific, 50% of the respondents said that all staff remained employed, but 29% said some of the staff had been laid off. Sorry, and then yeah, so yeah, there were some negative experiences occurring among the early childhood personnel. Next, please. The third key finding, I'm going to try to go very quickly. So in terms of the support received, there was some variation between the two regions. The highest sort of percentage of responses that were received was about the regular or clear guidance on school or center management in this crisis situation that was received the highest in Asia Pacific. If you look at the South Sub-Saharan Africa, there were some level of support that they experienced, but as a matter of fact, close to 70% of the respondents said that they received no support. So so that was emerged from the responses. Next, please. So the fourth one is about whether the centers were able to continue communicating or education during closure. A bigger percentage from the Asia Pacific was found compared to Sub-Saharan Africa, and then the way to get in to keep in touch in terms of communication and the way of continuing education through mobile messengers was the response that received the most from for both regions. Next, please. So the fifth finding is about the challenges. So what the teachers were asked what were the big challenges that they faced, and they were free to check which one they had the experiences. So the majority, as you can see, for both regions actually was about the lack of affordable internet access and equipment. Cited as the greatest challenge, but also lack of training and guidance or support for distance learning. So that was also prominent. Difficulty to monitor children's progress was also highlighted for both regions, as you can see in the table. Next, please. So the sixth finding is about maintaining regular contact. So we asked them, what do you find as effective strategies for remote learning to the personnel? And so here the two responses were highest. So one is about regular contact through messaging, social media, other apps, and work sent home with follow-up. Next, please. So the seventh finding was about what do they perceive as requirements for safe reopening of the centers or schools. So most of the respondents did say did respond in terms of sanitary measures, preventative measures of COVID, as you can see up there. But then we also see that they found that the parent support was very much needed in order to be able to be successful in safe reopening. So that's very interesting. Next, please. So the eighth finding is about teachers responding regarding sort of the impact on children, and they were worried also about the lack of educational continuity, but also the lack of continuity in terms of nutrition provision. And we found several respondents talking about it as a point of worry, that not being able to come to early childhood centers, it will have a detrimental effect on children who are disadvantaged, who cannot who don't have any who don't have sufficient food available at home, and then they were benefiting from the food provided at the center, but now that it was closed, they were very concerned. Next, please. Let me start with the key message, first key message. So one is provide timely financial and in-kind assistance in crisis situation and in support of safe reopening conditions for early childhood centers. It includes assistance to overcome hardship, which could include food security provision and psychosocial well-being, and also financial assistance. Assistance in remote teaching, and then yes, for the safe reopening. Next, please. Another big key message is that we need to improve early childhood personnel capacity with regard to remote teaching and learning, and also in terms of crisis management. And we should also continue to invest or advocate continue to invest in providing decent working conditions. Next, please. The third key message is about the need to strengthen effort to develop remote teaching and learning that is adapted to early years and the local context. We have seen some responses in free text responses that said that they don't find distance learning. They don't find it appropriate for young children to do distance learning, or they are worried about the screen time effect or long screen time, or they were worried about the children not able to concentrate on distance learning in front of the screen for a long time. So there are lots of issues that came out from sort of the free text. Yes, I think that this is a big issue coming up. So I think this, next please. I think this is my last one, just to show the cover of the report, and then how to access the report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Yoshie. Thank you all for the sharing the findings from the research. Okay, link to that. We don't have enough time, but link to that. I will just ask one question. So, how would the UNESCO respond to those findings and recommendation of these studies? You could just answer it really quick. Any of you? Okay.
If I may very quickly, I think what Mercedes said in the very beginning really rings a bell, that in terms of solidarity, we learned from COVID that working together and bringing partners together is really the best way of countering different kinds of challenges. And it seems that regardless of maybe because of the COVID impact, the early childhood is having much more difficulties in making itself visible, and then gaining investment within all different areas, because investments might go into more easily into primary education, secondary education, in terms of improving distance learning strategies, for example. But then early childhood is not so much of the focus right now. So I think the solidarity aspect is very important, and I think UNESCO really would like to keep working on advocating the increase of the training opportunities and better working conditions for teachers. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for clearing that point of us. Okay, Mercedes.
Okay, well, we have reached to the end of our fourth seminar, feeling a great joy, because we have learned a lot, and because these dialogues have enriched and increased our motivation to continue working for young children. And I want to highlight the participation of Nigeria, Colombia, Croatia, Argentina, France, Ghana, Russia, Japan, Kenya, Cuba, Mexico, and Peru, and the participation, of course, of two of our vice presidents, regional vice presidents, Udom Lukula Pichir from Asia Pacific region, and Nyamike Kiama from Africa. So thank you so much for coming in and to participate because of your participation. I would like to remind you that the recording of this seminar will be available in the 3 official languages of OMEP in our YouTube channel, OMEP World TV. And you will receive the notice by mail when this happens, so you can share the recordings within the committees and the communities, and thus continue to multiply our efforts and progress. All the discussions around these topics and the shared spaces strengthens us as a community and give visibility to the importance of early childhood education and care. Throughout this OMEP seminar series, we share experiences and perspectives that reflect knowledge, diversity, and richness of policies and pedagogies built around the world for early childhood. These dialogues are also the opportunity to advance in our flagship initiative, the Decade for Early Childhood Education and Care, and a new general comment from the Committee on the Rights of the Child. Our work that does not stop and continued with energy. As you may know, UNESCO, EDCAN, and OMEP are co-organizing the launch of an event of the Global Partnership Strategy for Early Childhood. We invite you all to join us online and to be a key actor to push towards achieving quality and inclusive early childhood care and education for all children by 2030. It's our commitment. The event will be held on December 6th at 1:30 p.m. Paris time. Finally, I thank again all the colleagues of UNESCO, especially to Rolla and to Yoshie. Thank you so much for your collaboration, for these wonderful documents and research, and to Delphine Dorsey and Rajakumari Mikhail Sami from the Right to Education Initiative. Thank you very much again. I also appreciate the accurate and warm coordination of Soon Hwan Kim, President of OMEP Korea. Thank you, Soon. Finally, I thank the OMEP Secretariat team and the translators, without whom this webinar would be impossible to develop. Thank you, Camila Hirsch, Eliana Espinosa, Carlos Páez, Gonzalo de la Cuadra, Federico Gianotti, Carolina Torres, Gabriela César, and Marcos Wasinger. See you on Monday, December 6th. See you soon. Warm regards. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, we're gonna close the session by thanking all the speakers and all of those who have taken the part of this session. See you soon on Monday. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yoshie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, Elizabeth. See you. Hello, Danielle. Bye-bye, Mercedes.
Bye-bye.